Hi everyone, welcome to the sibling rivalry session. My name is Ella, conscious parent coach, and we'll be talking all about sibling rivalry today. What not to do, what to do, and how to make it less. And if you're wondering, who is this workshop for? Well, if you've ever said the words, why can't you two just get along? Welcome, because this session is for you. What is sibling rivalry and why do siblings argue so much anyway? So, sibling rivalry is basically when kids have different temperaments, different personalities, but they compete for the same parental affection, attention, and resources. It's not a negative thing, I promise. Your kids fighting doesn't make it the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It just means that they don't know how to get along. Now, why is it a good thing? Because it's an actual opportunity for kids to learn the skills they need in this world, and it's your job to teach them those skills. Through their relationship with their siblings, the skills that they can learn are social and interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence and regulation, compassion and empathy, conflict resolution and negotiation, which is a crucial skill to have in this world. In fact, there's educational fields in universities just dedicated to this. Resilience, accountability, and forgiveness, and so much more. Now, if sibling rivalry is so great because it can teach our kids all these skills, why don't we just let them argue it out and hash it out themselves? Because that's not how it works. Like any other skill, such as walking, talking, holding a spoon, playing an instrument, this skill requires coaching and practice. And that's where you come in. You become the coach that will teach your child these skills depending on the situation that you have. Just remember, kids are born with all their feelings, but zero skills. And no skill is taught or learned in a day. Now, for skills to be taught, coaching and practice are required. And I mean a lot of practice. Now, as parents, you are not to blame for your kids fighting, even though sometimes it really feels that way, but you are responsible, which is a positively powerful position to be in because you're the one that can change the dynamic and help their relationship and teach them to argue respectfully and fight fair. Now, more often than not, this is supported by research. Children's behavior with their sibling is directly impacted by the way the parents behave towards them. So if as parents you're harsh or bossy, this can translate into mean siblings. If you say things like, I told you to stop it, this can translate into your child bossing their sibling around and yelling instead of asking. If as a parent you invalidate your child's feelings and say things like, there's nothing to cry about, stop overreacting, you're fine, just get up again. This can translate into your child ignoring their siblings' emotional distress or laughing at it. This takes us back to it being your responsibility to coach your kids through and for these moments. Now, this workshop is broken down into 3 parts. Things to avoid, the what not to do's, because these can make the situation worse and create more resentment and fights between kids. Second part is strategies to use in the heat of the moment and how to diffuse a fight or an argument without taking sides or being unfair to either child. And third is strategies to use outside of the critical moments to reduce the frequency and intensity of the arguments. Let's start with the first part, the things to avoid, the parent's role, and how we accidentally can fuel the fire. Research has proven that parents who are compassionate, who set realistic expectations and offer support to meet those expectations, have children that are more compassionate and caring towards each other. Strict and permissive parents, on the other hand, raise kids who fight more. Now, here are a few things to avoid doing during a sibling fight. And now, when I mention these things, you don't need to do all of them on the same day in the same fight because it will be hard for you to practice so many different skills in one go. But what you can do is pick one step and do that for a week. Try that. The first one is forcing compassion, empathy, sharing, or apology. And these are things to avoid doing during a sibling fight. Do not force any of these. Why? Because anything that is forced isn't genuine. And more often than not, when you force an apology, you'll hear the other child respond with, sorry doesn't fix anything, Because they can sense it. It's not genuine. And it's only done to avoid getting in trouble. And we only force apologies, even though we know as adults that it's not genuine, because we hope it will build compassion and care between our children. But it does exactly the opposite. Forcing kids to do any of these things feels unfair, builds resentment and negative feelings towards the siblings, but not toward us. And that resentment is what blocks genuine empathy, which is what we wanted in the first place. Things to avoid, number two, punishments, because they backfire during sibling fights. In a sibling fight, you should never punish, because then the focus shifts from sharing, being assertive, and learning to problem solve, to simply one kid trying to avoid punishment the next time, but not actually learning to care about their sibling. So a kid may learn not to hit their brother, but not because they care about their brother now, but because they just don't want to get in trouble again. And studies also show that punishment delays empathy, it teaches fear, and it creates tendencies towards anger and depression. And kids tend to focus on revenge instead of learning to get along. Third thing to avoid during sibling fights is taking sides. When parents take sides, children stop seeing the conflict as a shared conflict. And they don't just hear who was right or who was not from the parent. For kids, it goes a lot deeper. Children who are blamed often develop insecurities because then love becomes conditional and it's given only when they behave. So their self-worth is tied to outside approval, which none of us really want for our children. So while one child focuses on defending themselves, the other focuses on winning validation and the sense of entitlement. Taking sides may feel fair in the moment, especially when one child is physically hurt. But even in that situation, just like punishments, taking sides leads to the aggressor in a sibling fight being more aggressive or more careful the next time not to get caught. And the hurt sibling doesn't actually learn to stand up for themselves because the parent always does it for them. A few other things to avoid during sibling fights, and I'll go through them very quickly, are labeling. Oh, you're such an easy kid. You're such a good kid. Why are you so stubborn? Why can't you be like your sister? All these labels don't help for sibling fights. They actually make the sibling fights a lot more. Over-mediating too fast, jumping in, trying to rescue the situation and solve the problem on your own. It doesn't help the kids to learn any skills. Comparing efforts, grades, emotions, this doesn't motivate, it actually demotivates. Expecting older kids to be the bigger person, because that doesn't actually teach skills, it teaches suppression. Now, what to do instead? This is the tools that I'm going to be giving you that you need to take one at a time and practice them. And this is divided into two sections as well. Intervening in sibling arguments and physical fights. So two different things and two different ways of intervening. Usually when kids argue or fight, it's because they're both too upset to care about the other one. And our first goal is to make sure that we are calm enough so that we can calm our kids. And kids usually borrow their calm from us. So depending on how we're reacting, they will be reacting, which means when we intervene, we have to make sure that we're empathic to both children, regardless of who we think started it or whose fault it is. Because if your intervention feels like an attack to just one child even, they're not going to empathize with their sibling. And that's what we want. What we want for each child is to learn the exact skills they need to be able to manage those scenarios better the next time. Now, here's a step-by-step of what an intervention can look like in a sibling argument. So the first step, regulate and show it. Help kids calm down and move out of the fight or flight zone. This can be done by making sure that your tone and attitude reflect your calm and that you know the situation's not an emergency. And you let them know as well. This can sound something like, okay, looks like we have a problem here. I'm sure we can solve it. And I just want to point out that telling the kids to calm down doesn't calm anyone down. That doesn't even work with adults. In fact, it makes them angrier and more frustrated. Now, how to regulate your emotions and how you do that becomes the blueprint for your kids' emotional regulation. And regulation that in that moment can look like any of this. You closing your eyes and taking some deep breaths. And they're watching you. Or it could be you asking the kids to move to a different location with you. If you're sitting down, maybe having them stand up, or if you're already standing up, having them sit down, change positions, even change rooms, because all of these have proven to help the body calm down. Second step is to be a good listener. A huge contributor to sibling fights is not feeling heard. So, your second step after regulation is to let both kids know you will hear them out, but they have to take turns, even if they don't want to. And it can sound something like this: I want you both to tell me what's going on, and we are going to take turns. I promise I will hear both of you out, just taking turns first. So when children feel heard, it helps calm their nervous system and eases them out of the fight or flight mode. Now use a calm, non-judgmental tone. And once you've heard them out, you can say, okay, so here's what happened. You're basically mirroring what they've just told you. You were building a tower and your sister knocked your tower and you were upset, so you threw a Lego piece at her. And you wanted to play with your brother, but he wasn't letting you play, so you got upset and you knocked his tower over. You've mirrored what they said, so they both now feel heard. The third step is you are the interpreter. Think of it this way. The reason kids fight is because they don't understand each other. Now, I don't mean the language that they're speaking in, because obviously they speak the same language. I mean, they're not understanding each other's needs, wants, and feelings. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in, because emotional intelligence is a skill. They're not born with it. And we can't expect our kids to have it if we haven't modeled it or coached them. So you need to become the bridge between their miscommunication. An interpretation can sound something like this, depending on the kid's age. Did you hear the baby started being fussy when you carried her? You notice how she moved around? It looks like she wants you to put her down. Your sister asked you to stop. She doesn't want to rough play anymore. And now, depending on the kid's age, your interpretation can either be done with both kids present, or if they're preteens and teens, your interpretation can be done when they're not together anymore, because this creates a safer environment for both kids to feel empathy. It can sound something like this for teens. When you tell her you shouldn't do this in an angry tone, your sister only hears that you are angry at her. Is there any other way you could speak to her? I'll let you think about that. And then you walk away. Sometimes this interpretation is best done when kids are not together, especially depending on their age. But take that as a case-by-case scenario. Now, my favorite method for teenagers is definitely this, but that's a whole discussion for a later time. Number 4, step 4 is to coach the problem solving. Now, instead of who did what, let's rephrase it to who will do what to solve this situation. Because we're not jumping in to save the day. We want them to be a part of the problem solving. Invite kids to take turns giving ideas, and I guarantee you, you will get some really absurd ideas, such as, oh, I have a solution. How about I never ever have to see her again? And it's okay. We're not going to agree with them, and we're not going to shut those down immediately either. But we want to encourage the kids to cooperate, so we have to gently guide those absurd ideas to more reasonable solutions. Now, this will again have to be tailor-made depending on the age of the children. For example, with teenagers, and if you started, coaching the problem solving years ago, you may no longer need to coach as much, which is something I don't do as much anymore, but you do activate the empathy by asking the right questions. I wonder how she felt when you called her that, but I'm sure you'll figure things out. And I know you'll win, your siblings' heart over. And then you give them the space to think about that. And guaranteed, once you're out of their earshot or you can't see them anymore, the children will figure things out on their own because they have already had the coaching. What to do in a physical fight? Now, the steps will be the same, except you first need to actually stop the physical fight. You still need to calm yourself. And the first step may be harder to achieve, the calming yourself. So work hard at that one first, because if you haven't regulated, there's very little you can do. So stay calm and physically stop the fight, either by blocking, removing, or standing between them, or removing objects if they're being thrown around. And you tell them very confidently that you won't allow them to hurt each other. The confidence that you say that with dictates how calm they will get, and they need to be, because they believe that there's an authority that won't let us hurt each other. So I'm not going to get hurt, but I also can't hurt anyone else. You make sure both kids are safe. And if you need to comfort the child that is hurt or the child that is angry and out of control, do so. And the final rule for parenting, and the best parenting tool that I can teach anyone, is the one that's going to reduce the magnitude and frequency of sibling fights. And it's the one-to-one quality time rule, the golden rule of parenting. When you spend one-to-one quality time with each kid, the benefits that your kids get from this is amazing. I'll just name a few. Higher self-esteem, increased and improved connection with the parent, which is what we all want because that's what gets kids to listen to you. Stronger emotional bonds, improved behavior and mental health, boosted confidence, enhanced communication, academic and social growth, and this is supported by research. And of course, reduced sibling rivalry, which is why we're here. So if you only take one thing away from today's session, let it be that consistent and intentional quality time with each kid, because this one alone can do wonders in your home. And if you haven't been able to do anything else, any of the other steps, and it will take time to build those skills in you, let alone in your kids, make this the first rule that you start, which is the one-to-one quality time, because it will have a drastic influence on your home environment, your connection with each sibling, and their relationship with each other. Now, I hope you benefited from the sibling rivalry workshop, and I'm very happy to see you in the next workshops.